So we raise money on a deal by deal basis. Every month, every single month of the year, there's conversations within our business about creating a fund and aggregating money together and then doing those sorts of things. And we always shy away from it. I think that what I've found is that fundamentally investors really want to look at the deal that they're putting money into because it gives them that feeling of ownership. A fund doesn't create any feeling of ownership because I'm part of funds myself, so I'm a passive investor in funds, and I can tell you that projects where I invested in an individual multifamily or in an individual asset, I feel a higher level of attachment because I made that selection. I went in, I looked at the webinar, the pictures, the numbers, and I said, yep, I want to put 100 grand into this. With a fund, there's no emotion attached to it. It's just, I have no idea what they're buying. And when they send an email, they just say, hey, we bought this building or that building. And so there's really never any feeling of, well, they never asked me if I should be part of that building. So what I find is that investors, even though they understand the benefit of a fund that you're diversifying across assets, so technically your risk level goes down. What I found was because it doesn't meet that emotional requirement that I want to make a decision, that it reduces the velocity of our raises. And so we stick with raising money project by project, and it takes us about 4 to 6 weeks after we put a property in contract. And I think that the truth is that if you've been investing with a sponsor on a deal by deal basis for a number of years, then it makes sense to transition into a fund, because you eventually get to the point where you're not investing into a property, you're just investing into that team. And that happens a while after you start investing. Your first investment as a passive investor, you're always investing in a deal, right? I like this property, I want to invest in it. Yes, I like this team, but I really don't, what do I know about them, right? They sound like, cool people, but they could be crooks for all I know. So I'm going to invest into this property. And the second deal, you're still looking at the property, but by the third deal, because you've now had a huge amount of exposure to that team, their monthly emails, their quarterly webinars, whatever it is that they do for reporting, you're now transitioning to saying, I want to invest in this team. And that's when I think a fund becomes more powerful, because you do want that diversity of the fund, and you do want that risk reduction to partner with an institutional sponsor. I think that the mindset of an institutional sponsor, the way they react, the way they think, is so different from us that I think I would be miserable partnering with an institutional sponsor. So I think that one's out. I don't mean to suggest that they're bad or evil or anything like that. I mean to suggest that there's no meeting of the minds there. The way they think, the way they believe is, to me, a little bit mercenary. To them, I think they're going to say, hey, we just make logical decisions, right? To me, I'm the kind of guy that will, if my backs are to the wall, I'll fight. And an institutional fund is like, I'm investing $1 billion. I've already factored in that I'm going to lose 4 or 5 assets. So I don't need to fight on this one because my other 95 assets are okay. I'm not okay with that. And so I think that there would be a clash there. So I don't think I'd invest with institutional folks. Would I invest with first-time partners? That is a good question. Have I done it before? Yes. And if I think about it, in general, I have been happier investing with partners that were on their second, third, or fourth deal than with partners on their first deal. Not necessarily because they were bad people. I actually like working with them, but because it took a while for them to come to the same conclusions that we would come to. So it was a process where, if you had done 3 deals, you would take a month to come to that same conclusion that we had, or come to the same conclusion at the same time as us. Whereas a new partner, it took them 3, 6, 9, 12 months to come to that conclusion. So standing by and waiting for them to arrive at the inevitable conclusion that we'd arrived at based on experience has proven to be a rather frustrating process. And so I think that there's really no substitute for experience. But what I found is, I'm not sure if I want to partner with somebody that has done 12 deals. So I think that there's a Goldilocks zone there. There's a sweet spot there. And to me, I think that sweet spot is I'd like to be partnering with people on their third deal all the way up to maybe their 10th. And then beyond the 10th deal, I think that they really need to work by themselves, because eventually you get to the point where you've done so many deals, for better or for worse, your opinions get very strong and rigid. And that's just a natural byproduct of so much experience, right? I mean, it must be really difficult to tell Warren Buffett something that he doesn't already know or sway his mind at this point, right? You know, I'm sure Charlie has trouble telling anything to Warren Buffett. So my point is, I think that there's a sweet spot there, and my sweet spot is like the third to the 10th deal. That's an ideal partner for us to work together. And then beyond that point, firstly, they probably don't need to work with a partner because they're so well settled. And secondly, I think that it would be hard for them to kind of be flexible. I wouldn't say they're terrible in hate marketing. I'd say that they're not good at it, and they struggle with it. And eventually they come to the conclusion that this is just not something that they like spending time on, right? So there's people out there that I think that would do well if they spend the amount of time, but they have a strong resistance to spending the amount of time that is needed to raising capital. Raising capital, I don't consider it to be a part-time job, though most syndicators do it as a part-time job. I think that raising capital is a very full-time job. And so the approach that we've taken is, if we can partner with people that are bringing good products to us and are willing to engage with us in an asset management system that we've designed. It's not their design, it's our design. So, you know, we have about 60 or 70 asset management trackers. And those trackers, you know, some of them, a lot of them are updated weekly, some are updated monthly, some are updated quarterly, a few are updated quarterly. And they're willing to talk to our, how shall I describe it, to our hound, our CFO, Loretta Hayes. She's got 30 years worth of experience, and they're willing to basically go through a examination of the property's fundamentals every month. That group we'd love to work with, because we believe that finding assets and going through the due diligence process is also a very full-time job. Because if you want to be a stable syndicator, you want to do it 4 times a year. Well, if you're going to be doing it 4 times a year, where's the time to raise money?